Welcome to INAN's Student. INAN Student is a platform for law students to come here and deliver a lecture on the topic of their choice. Today we have with us law student Chhayang Naik. He is going to speak on Suo Moto Cognizance. He is from KES Shri Jayantilal Patel College of Law. So without wasting further time, I would request Chhayang to commence with his lecture. Thank you.
Imagine you are reading the morning news and you come across a tragic story about a small community suffering due to a factory releasing toxic waste nearby. Now imagine no one from that community has the resources to file a complaint or take this issue to court. Yet, the power of yet within days, the judiciary steps in on its own without waiting for anyone to file a case. This is the power of Suo Moto Cognizance, where the court acts independently to protect people and ensure justice. Hello everyone, my name is Chhayang Naik and today I am going to talk about Suo Moto Cognizance, a Latin term meaning on its own motion. The legal principle empowers the judiciary to take action on the matters without any formal complaint or petition being filed. The principle of suo moto jurisdiction allowing courts to act on their own is rooted on India's constitution and has evolved through judicial interpretations. It underscores the judiciary's role as the third pillar of democracy in safeguarding the rights enshrined in the constitution and upholding the ideals of the preamble. Historically, suo moto cognizance has its origin in common law principles primarily derived from Latin legal tradition and where courts could act independently to uphold justice. Indian courts primarily addressed cases with a dispute when a dispute was raised by one party against another. While Articles 32 and 226 of the Constitution allowed individuals to approach the Supreme Court and the High Court for enforcement of fundamental rights, the judiciary mostly acted on petitions filed by individuals or parties involved in a dispute. However, the concept of suo moto cognizance evolved significantly post-emergency. The Supreme Court began addressing issues of government inaction and institutional neglect, especially where the rights of vulnerable groups were at stake. This era marked the rise of public interest litigation (PIL) and expanded the court's responsibilities towards social justice. The Constitution, through Article 32 and 226, grants the Supreme Court and High Court the power to enforce fundamental rights, and the Contempt of Courts Act 1971 allows the judiciary to act against any threats to the justice system itself. These provisions enable courts to step in proactively, ensuring that cases of gross injustice do not go unaddressed. Now let's talk about the legal framework for suo moto cognizance. Although suo moto cognizance is not explicitly mentioned in the Constitution of India, it operates within a framework deeply rooted in constitutional and legislative principles. The absence of a direct reference does not diminish its significance or applicability in ensuring justice. Article 32 and 226 serve as the foundational pillars for this mechanism, empowering citizens to approach the Supreme Court and High Courts respectively for the enforcement of their fundamental rights. Article 32 specifically follows individuals to seek redress when their rights are infringed, while Article 226 enables the High Courts to issue writs to safeguard these rights. The legal framework further supports the exercise of suo moto powers through specific statutes. The Contempt of Court Act 1971, notably under Section 23, empowers courts to initiate contempt proceedings on their own accord. The provision is crucial in maintaining the integrity of judicial proceedings, especially when the dignity of the court is at stake. Additionally, the Supreme Court rules, particularly Order 38, Rule 12, Subsection 1, Clause A, were amended in 2014 to formalize the procedures surrounding suo moto petitions, thereby granting the Supreme Court explicit authority to address matters autonomously. The evolution of judicial activities in India is closely tied to the concept of public interest litigation, which gained prominence in the late 20th century. The judiciary recognized the need to act on the behalf of marginalized groups unable to represent themselves, leading to an expansion of suo moto actions based on various sources, including letters and media reports. A landmark case exemplifying this trend is Sunil Batra versus Delhi Administration 1978, where the Supreme Court took cognizance of a letter from a prisoner alleging inhumane treatment. This intervention not only illustrated the judiciary's commitment to human rights but also marked a significant step in the realm of judicial activism. Furthermore, the scope of suo moto cognizance has extended into writ jurisdiction encompassing vital legal remedies such as habeas corpus, mandamus, certiorari, prohibition, and quo warranto. The inherent flexibility within this jurisdiction allows courts to uphold constitutional values and intervene effectively in cases where fundamental rights are jeopardized. Overall, the legal framework governing suo moto cognizance is a manifestation of judiciary's proactive role in safeguarding constitutional rights, reinforcing the principles of justice and equity for all individuals. Through this framework, the Supreme Court and High Courts not only fulfill their constitutional obligations but also respond to the broader societal needs, particularly in the times of government apathy and institutional neglect. Now let's discuss some case laws regarding suo moto cognizance. Firstly, the very first case of suo moto cognizance was seen in the Sunil Batra versus Delhi Administration case as mentioned previously. In this case of Sunil Batra versus Delhi Administration, it was a landmark judgment that highlighted the fundamental rights of prisoners under the Indian Constitution. Sunil Batra, a convict on a death row, wrote to the Supreme Court describing the inhumane treatment of prisoners, which included instances of torture, abuse, and neglect at the Tihar jail. This letter was converted into a habeas corpus proceeding and marked a pivotal role use of Article 20 or Article 32, allowing the court to investigate prison conditions as a public interest issue. The court held that fundamental rights, particularly Articles 14 and 21, were applicable to prisoners, affirming that even inmates retain their rights to life and dignity. It found that solitary confinement and torture were unconstitutional and mandated regular inspections to improve prison conditions. This judgment underscored the need for prison reforms, highlighting that jail authorities were bound to respect prisoners' rights and reinforcing a more human and a reformative approach to imprisonment. Now, there are case laws regarding the environmental concerns. So, the Supreme Court has actively intervened in environmental cases to prevent further ecological degradation. In the RA Forest case 2019, the court, responding to a letter from law students, ordered the Maharashtra government to halt tree felling in RA Forest, that is the deforestation. Additionally, it has taken suo moto action regarding Delhi's severe air pollution, issuing several orders to monitor and implement strategies to improve air quality in the capital. Now there are case laws regarding grave situations warning urgent intervention. Like in July 2023, the Supreme Court addressed sexual violence during the ethnic conflict in Manipur, forming a committee of 3 former female High Court judges to oversee humanitarian efforts, including relief and rehabilitation. To ensure thorough investigation amidst communal unrest, 11 related FIRs were transferred to the CBI. Another instance of suo moto action was taken in the recent RG Kar hospital rape and murder case. Now let's talk about the importance of suo moto cognizance. Well, the very first point that comes in my mind is protection of public interest. Suo moto actions allow courts to address issues of public interest that might otherwise go unaddressed. This power enables the judiciary to act on pressing matters, especially in cases where vulnerable populations need protection or where there is a risk of harm to public welfare. Accountability and governance is the next point. By taking suo moto cognizance, courts can ensure accountability in governance, especially when administrative actions or inactions threaten the public rights. This oversight is particularly important in cases of human rights violation, environmental concerns, and corruption, where swift intervention can lead to corrective measures. Lastly, expanding access to justice. Suo moto cognizance helps extend legal redress to individuals who may lack the resources to approach the court independently. By initiating action themselves, Courts can address systematic issues affecting large sections of body, large sections of society, ensuring justice is more accessible to all. Now let's talk about the practical implications of suo moto cognizance. So firstly, enhanced judicial responsiveness is one big effect of suo moto cognizance. Suo moto cognizance empowers courts to respond promptly to social and political issues, especially when government actions are delayed. This can lead to quicker resolutions in crises such as natural disasters or public health emergencies, where swift judicial intervention can help mitigate harm and ensure timely relief. Secondly, policy influence and checks on power. The power to take suo moto action enables the judiciary to influence policy decisions, especially when legislative or executive actions seem inadequate. While this can foster accountability, it may also create friction between government branches, underscoring the delicate balance needed to avoid conflicts over separation of powers. Thirdly, challenges of fairness and consistency. While suo moto actions increase access to justice, they can sometimes lead to questions about transparency and impartiality. The lack of standardized process for selecting cases raises concerns about consistency, and there is the risk that subjective decision making could lead to perceived bias or inequality in judicial interventions. Now let's move to the next point of challenges and criticisms of suo moto cognizance. While suo moto cognizance has been lauded for its role in addressing urgent matters of public concern, it has also faced criticisms on various fronts. Firstly, judicial overreach. Critics argue that suo moto actions sometimes blur the lines between the judiciary and the executive, leading to accusations of judicial overreach. In particular, when courts take suo moto cognizance of policy matters, they are seen as encroaching on the domain of the legislature and executive. This can lead to tensions between the branches of government and raise questions about the separation of powers, as mentioned previously. One such case was the suo moto action taken by the Supreme Court to monitor the distribution of COVID-19 vaccines in 2021. While the court's intervention was aimed at ensuring equitable access to vaccines, some argued that the judiciary was overstepping its role by directing the government on how to manage its vaccination policy. Secondly, lack of transparency. Another criticism of suo moto action is perceived lack of transparency and accountability in how cases are selected for suo moto cognizance. Since these cases are initiated by the courts themselves, there is no formal procedure or criteria for determining which matters are taken up. This can lead to concerns about judicial arbitrariness and selective intervention. Procedural fairness. Suo moto actions often bypass the traditional adversarial legal process where two parties present the case before the court. In suo moto cases, the court assumes both the role of petitioner and the judge, which can raise concerns about procedural fairness. Critics argue that this can sometimes lead to rushed decisions or inadequate consideration of all perspectives. Finally, I would like to conclude here and give a summary. In summary, suo moto cognizance represents a critical facet of judicial power in India, enabling the courts to proactively address urgent societal and legal issues, especially where the rights of marginalized individuals or pressing public interests are concerned. While it serves as a valuable tool to uphold the justice and extend legal access to those who may otherwise be overlooked, this power also requires a careful balance to avoid overstepping into the domains of the executive or legislative branches. Overall, suo moto actions highlight the judiciary's commitment to safeguarding constitutional values, affirming its role as an active guardian of public interest within the framework of democratic society. Lastly, I would like to say suo moto powers are an important way of reaching out to the unheard voices of society. Thank you.
Chhayang, thank you very much. It was nice hearing on the Suo Moto, and it seems that we have covered the very recent topics, because mostly when people try to speak on Suo Moto, they keep on talking about things which are 50 years old or when it started and all. But you have nicely covered the very current topics which have happened in India, and it is good that you have covered the both sides, good and bad. So that's a very important way to put a topic. So thank you very much. and this is a small token from us to you.
Thank you, sir.